Tier 2 is almost upon us, and after brainstorming and experimenting for the past several weeks, I'm pretty confident into the builds that I made, and I wanted to share it with you just to get some feedback, and so you can also potentially experiment with those builds and maybe create an even better version of them. As you know, Spear Dagger did get a nerf in Tier 2, and we will be getting those nerfs on the 6th of March, but that doesn't mean that the weapon combination is actually weak, and with the Tier 2 we can actually make it good and we can actually make it decent. Also, all of the builds that I made on this page, which is going to be linked in the description, are using the absolute maximum endgame best in slot stuff with artifacts, with masteries, and with the best in slot runes, chaos runes, and other gear. So feel free to clone any of these builds to your own profile and then experiment with removing the artifacts, changing the masteries. Feel free to experiment with different runes, different rune combinations, different resonance effects, whatever you want to do, just feel free to do it yourself. I'm only showing you what the ultimate endgame potential of this build can be. All of the builds that I made on this page are free to play friendly, which means that they don't use nebula accessories, they don't use arc boss weapons, and all the remaining gear are very easily obtainable, except one gear that I made that uses nebula accessories, tier 2 arc boss weapons, which I'm going to show you later. As you already know, I do have Queen Belandir's spear and Tevin daggers, so most of the builds are using those two weapons, but I have also made a copy of that same build and made slight adjustments to stats and some other accessories while adding tier 2 spear and tier 2 daggers. There are two ways you can build a spear dagger. First, you can go full into defensive survivability mode with stacking a lot of evasion and endurance, but in turn you're going to be losing a lot of DPS stats. Or you can go full glass cannon build, which sacrifices a lot of defensive and survivability options, but it also puts a lot of emphasis on damage dealing capabilities and damage dealing stats. It's up to you which playstyle do you prefer. First I'm gonna show you the defensive survivability 3 builds that I have made, and then I'm gonna show you all of my potential glass cannon builds that I'm probably gonna be using. Here on your screen you can see a full melee evasion build with 3.5k melee evasion. First I want to say that I think melee evasion for Spear Dagger only is bait. And the reason for that is you're building melee evasion against 3 potential classes. Greatsword Spear, Greatsword Dagger, and Spear Dagger. Those are the 3 melee meta weapons that you need to be worrying when you're building melee evasion. The problem with 3.5k melee evasion is that the Greatsword Dagger can reach well above 3.5k melee hit. Greatsword Spear can reach well over 4000 melee hit if they really wanted to, and a Spear Dagger player, if you really wanted to push to the maximum and get the absolute maximum base hit that you can get with all the passives, you can reach up to 3.4k melee hit. So with that logic, if you have 3.5k melee evasion, it is literally useless. But to build 3.5k melee evasion, you literally sacrifice so many good stats. As you can see, your attack speed, shit. Your melee critical hit chance, low. Melee heavy attack chance, also low. Critical damage is decent and melee hit chance is also decent, but you're pretty much losing on other stats like cooldown speed, skill damage boost, and it's definitely not worth getting melee evasion that high on a Spear Dagger. Other classes, range classes like Staff Dagger, Bow Dagger, Crossbow Dagger, you can most definitely build it because you don't lose DPS stats when you build melee evasion, but for Spear Dagger I would personally avoid going for melee evasion builds. Next we have a build that completely ditches melee evasion and goes fully into ranged and magic evasion only, and when I mean fully I'm talking about 3.4k base magic and ranged evasion with the Shadow Walker passive on the dagger. When you roll you gain additional 660 ranged and magic evasion, which puts you well above 4k ranged and magic evasion. Is this an overkill? Probably you don't need that much because normal staff daggers, bow daggers, X-bow daggers, they all have around 2.1 to 2.5k ranged and magic hit. So is it an overkill? Probably a little bit of much overkill, but if you really wanted to stack this many evasion, magic and ranged evasion, you're more than welcome to do it. But keep in mind you're going to be losing hit, you're going to be losing melee crit hit, you're going to be losing attack speed and all the other stats that are necessary to make the Spear Dagger work. And then the third build is going absolutely ham with the endurance. Triple endurance in this case, melee endurance, range endurance, magic endurance at a decent level, and this is enabled when you run it with the mastery. When you put Shadow Walker into the Shadow Armor to masteries, now you can gain 660 endurance when you roll. So this means that this 1.7, 1.5k becomes well over 2.3, 2.4k magic and ranged endurance. You also go absolutely ham on max health with 31,000 health. You have a decent hit chance, critical hit chance is a low, but in my opinion this is also very niche build, because I do personally believe if you have daggers and you want to play daggers, that evasion is going to be your best defensive stat, because if you do not have evasion and you only have endurance, you will always get hit by their CCs unless you build high resistance, which this build also doesn't really have, and most classes will completely be able to CC you. Now I'm gonna show you my personal pick and something that I'm going to build when tier 2 comes out. This build is kind of a glass cannon because it completely ditches melee evasion, but as you can see, ranged and magic evasion is decent enough, because you should aim around 2.4, 2.5k base magic and ranged evasion while ditching melee evasion. Because when you roll, you go above 3k, and this is going to be more than enough magic and ranged evasion to fight against ranged classes. But why do I like this build? I like this build because it's not heavy on defensive, but it is heavy on the offensive stats. As you can see, 61% additional added attack speed, which is really good. We have 2000 melee critical hit chance with almost 800 melee heavy attack chance. Critical damage is 41%. This is not including the 25% that you get from the Imperial Tracker, which means that this goes to 66% critical damage, which is insane. You get almost 2.3k melee hit chance with additional buffs of 772 passives and buffs. You can reach 3000 melee hit chance. And another important stats are the cooldown speed and buff duration, which are going to help you with using your skills more often and your buff staying longer. But this is just I'm gonna call it like my early to mid game build. My end game build is going to be grabbing the Delos Spear and using the Tavent Fangs of Fury, and this build absolutely goes even more ham on the offensive stats. As you can see, 640 max damage, base damage, 290 min damage. It gets even more attack speed, loses a little bit of a melee critical, but gets absolutely 300 more melee heavy attack chance. It is very heavily focused on melee heavy attack chance and 66% critical damage, while also going up to 2.4k melee hit chance. This is the reason why we gonna drop range and magic evasion by 300, so we can put more into melee hit chance. So yeah, this build uses double arc boss weapon and 4 nebula accessories, which is going to be very hard to obtain. It's gonna take a long time to get to this stats, but like I said, this is the reason why I have a backup option playing this, which is all of this is easily obtainable. All of these accessories drop from world bosses, dungeons. All the gear pieces dropped from the dungeons. I only have double arc boss weapon from tier 1, but here's the Crimson Carnage Spear and Birkin Seductive Blade that you can play, which is more free to play friendly. It doesn't use the arc boss weapons, but it uses everything else is the same. All the runes are the same, and as you can see, the stats are also looking really nice. You're gonna lose a little bit of a max damage, but that's normal because you have a weaker tier 2 weapon compared to the Belandir Spear. And lastly, I wanted to show a full PvE build. This is a build that is built literally for the highest possible PvE damage. As you can see, 661 base max damage. This build doesn't use any defensive stats. You don't play endurance, you don't play evasion. It's completely built to give you the highest damage possible, highest DPS, and you should not use this for PvP. As you can see, the stats are absolutely crazy. You can have a 50 strength, 83 dexterity, which is going to activate the 8% critical damage from the mastery, 70 wisdom, which is going to give you around 12,000 mana, I believe. Yeah, 12,000 mana in 1.4k mana region with mana cost efficiency 60%. And also on top of that, you have a 53% buff duration and a 40% cooldown speed. Like, this is the absolutely best build that you can play in PvE. As you can see, 42% critical damage, and we're playing Imperial Tracker double set, which is going to give you additional 25% on this, which is going to be 67% critical damage. As you can see, melee critical hit chance is really super high, as well as attack speed, but most importantly is melee heavy attack chance, which is almost 1.2k, but also with runes, we also playing boss melee heavy attack chance, which is additional 640, which goes on top of this, which pretty much puts you at almost 2000 melee heavy attack chance if you're gonna use the buffs that you get from your spear skills. And as you can see, melee hit chance, evasion, endurance, none of this really matters. All that matters is buff duration, cooldown speed, skill damage boost, attack speed, melee critical hit chance, melee heavy attack chance, and critical damage. But like I said, I only wanted to show you the gear builds because PvE skill builds and PvP skill builds are going to be changing a little bit than what they are now, because the mastery kinda does some things that require some of the adjustments and some of the changes. So I'm gonna have like a different separated build video on those PvE skill builds and PvP skill builds once we get the patch and the mastery unlocks and I can experiment more. But for now, I just wanted to show you what I cooked when it comes to gear builds and what I'm personally going to play. This is my personal favorite that I'm going to play early to mid game while I work on my end game build with Nebula accessories. Clone any of these builds, play around with it. If you want to see how it looks without artifacts, just simply clone it, remove all the artifacts, and you can see how it affects the stats, how it changes some of the stats. See if you like it, see if you don't like it. Play with the mastery, play with the other gear builds. And yeah, if you maybe cook something better, feel free to join my Discord, send me the links in the Discord. I can even look at all of your builds in the Discord and give you feedback. You can give me feedback in the comments on any of my builds. But like I also said, I have a specific playstyle, and maybe this build isn't going to work for many of you. Maybe you want to play something else. Maybe you want to go maybe more into melee evasion, defensive evasion. It all depends how you like to play, what you like to play. Do you want to play more as a stealthy assassin, or do you just want to spam your javelins into a crowd of people? Like, it really depends, and tier 2 is going to enable you to tailor the gear build and tailor your skill build to how you like to play. You're not going to be forced to play one meta that is good. You're going to be able to play whatever you want, and with, I mean, a lot of gear choices, you can pretty much build whatever you want. Like, trust me, like, you can build whatever you want. You want to go high melee hit, you can do that. You want to go high melee critical hit, you can do that. You're going to go high melee evasion, you can do that. Whatever you want to play, feel free to experiment. And also remember what I was telling you when I was making builds for bow dagger in tier 1. Do not blindly follow other people, what they make. Always tailor the gear to how you like to play, tailor to what your capabilities are, tailor to what you drop in game, because everything depends on your RNG and skill, what you can drop in the game, and how much Lucent you can potentially spend to maybe buy and gear some of those. So yeah guys, thank you for watching. This is gonna be it. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think about my builds. This is one of my personal favorite. Feel free to clone it, play around with it, let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date, and also stay tuned for more tier 2 videos once we get the patch.